everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for another one of our Beyond School Hours Education Conference follow-up webinars. My name is Elizabeth Seary. I'm the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning for Foundations, Inc. Foundations, Inc. is a national education nonprofit. We're located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, and our mission is to improve the quality of education by building the skills of educators. So we work across the school day, in the classroom, in after-school programs, with schools and school districts to make sure we're creating a brighter future for every child every day. You probably know us from our Beyond School Hours conference. It is our premier professional learning experience. We will be in Orlando in 2022, February of 2022. That you will join us. We're going to be back in person. We're so excited. But I would like to turn it over to Gina Moore, who is Director of Curriculum and Expansion for ARTreach 180, a therapeutic after-school arts program primarily focused on youth at risk and juvenile offenders. She's going to share some creative ways to empower all students by giving them a voice through the arts. So thank you, Gina, for joining us today.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. And hey, Chris McLeod. This Chris McLeod, he works for the county school system in Henry County, and we're very glad he is here, as well as all of the rest of you. And we will probably have more people joining us. I believe Paula said she had like 75 registered. So some people running a little late, obviously. But I would love to have your name and what you do and where you do it in this the chat box, if you would. Also, Paula has listed a Google Drive link if you want the handouts that would be helpful during this this webinar or this workshop, but it's not a deal breaker if you don't have those. And also, she has listed the art project supplies that would be helpful, but again, not absolutely necessary. Okay, ready to get started? I'm going to share my screen, and here we go. Elizabeth's already basically told you who I am and what I do. We are in Henry County, and I'm the curriculum writer for ARTreach 180. So everybody can see my screen? Yes, thumbs up, please. Awesome. Here we go. All right. Well, the whole topic of this workshop is giving students a voice. So we want kids to know that they're heard and that they have a voice. But sometimes it's not their voice that they use. Sometimes it's another medium, and we want to give you some of those tools today. Once again, here are the helpful supplies, but not the absolutely necessary supplies. However, I will warn you at the outset that this workshop is very much like a gumball machine. If you put something into it, you're going to get something out of it. So if you don't put anything into it, you may get something out of it, but it won't be as much as if you fully participated. So as I encourage my staff at almost every training session, be where your feet are. Okay, so hopefully you will all be fully present in this next 52 minutes that we have remaining. All right, so let's get started. Oh, one more thing. If you want the handouts, will you scan this QR code? You'll have another opportunity at the end. But if you want to receive the extra resources along with the art project and the deep dive discussion that we would be doing if we were in person, but it's not possible to do it because you wouldn't have the art supplies, but I would love to send you that as well. So scan that QR code, sign up to receive those extra resources. Okay, so here we go. Let's jump in. Our objectives for today's session, we just want to explore how the arts can empower all students, especially our most vulnerable ones. We want to enhance skills to create community in our whatever setting you're working in, whether it's after school, in the classroom, or in a behavioral program of some sort. We want to create artwork and build proficiency to gain therapeutic insight about that art project, and then examine the correlation between childhood trauma and future success. Are you ready? Yes? All right, here we go. All right. It's no secret that most kids begin their journey in social and emotional learning as children, right? Either on the playground or in the park with a caretaker or a parent, as they learn to communicate and share and respond to their emotions and have relationships and think independently. And everything is all perfect, right? Until it's not. And then things come and those skills get buried. And these things are what have come to be known as adverse childhood experiences. How many of you are familiar with that term, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences? Good, because we're going to focus there for just a moment. Innocence is lost when these ACEs happen to them, and their development up to that point gets buried. All right. Dr. Robert Block says that adverse childhood experiences are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing our nation. My question to you today is, why is it unaddressed? Why? When this is the lifespan as a result of ACEs. All these adverse childhood experiences happen, and then you get a disruption in their development, in their social, emotional, and cognitive development. You get health risk behaviors, you get disease and social issues, and you get early death in the total lifespan of the ACEs pyramid. When 67% of Americans have at least one adverse childhood experience, when a third of our students, guys, that just it boggles my mind, a third of our students ages 12 to 17 have 2 or more. And when kids with 4 or more are 12 times more likely to attempt suicide. Why is this an unaddressed public health threat? Well, Dr. Block is not the only one asking this question. Anybody know this lady? Anybody seen this lady before? Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, a pediatrician and the current Surgeon General of California. She has a TED Talk about ACEs, and I wish that we had 16 extra minutes to watch it. I will, if you signed up for their extra resources, I'm going to include a page of suggested resources, and this will be one of them. This is a fabulous TED Talk, but I'm going to share a little bit about what she shares. When she was a young doctor working in a free clinic in Bayside, California, she said she was getting scores and scores of kids who were diagnosed with ADHD. And as she began to do more psychosocial evaluations of these children, she realized that she couldn't put a diagnosis of ADHD on those kids. She said what they had in common was toxic stress caused by the environment they were from. And she said she remembered a story from medical school that when they ask if 100 kids drink from the same well and 98 of them get diarrhea, you have 2 choices. You can continue to write prescription after prescription after prescription for medication, or you can figure out what's wrong with the well. And guys, that's why I don't understand why this is an unaddressed health crisis, because we've got to figure out what's wrong with the well. What's the environment that these kids are coming from? And she ends that TED Talk by saying, it's time we stopped asking what's wrong with you, and we start asking what's happened to you. Wow. Well, let me lay my cards on the table, because there's a good news, bad news scenario here. Okay. We can ask kids, what's happened to you? What's the result we're going to get? Yeah,
nothing.
Here's the bad
They're going to
news.
say nothing.
Right. they won't speak their story if they don't trust you to listen, right? And listening means not talking, not judging, not giving advice, not shaming, but listening. And I tell my staff this all the time when I do training, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it 1,000 more times probably before I die. And that is, you can't start a sentence with "you need to." Erase "you need to" from your vocabulary, because nobody likes to hear "you need to do something," especially kids who have ACEs in their lives. Okay. So they're not going to speak their story if they don't trust you to listen. They're not going to speak their story if they think they have to be perfect. Guys, our kids don't know that it's okay not to be okay. Our kids believe they have to have a social media life all the time. And so for them to have a bad day is not acceptable in their social circles many times. So they've got to have permission to sit in those emotions that emerge. We got to give them that permission. And we've got to let them know that safe is not the same as comfortable. We can make them safe, but it may not be comfortable. Okay. They also won't speak their story if they don't think you'll protect it. If they believe that you're going to go to the teacher's lounge or the staff meeting and talk about it. We've got to protect what they give us. It's a treasure. Help them carry it, but don't carry it for them. And that's a whole nother subject, right? You help them carry it. You stand by them and you do the messy work because it takes a while. And then the last thing, they won't speak their story if they haven't felt validated. You know, it doesn't really matter if you agree with the behavior or not, that or their response to the emotion. Many, many times that we don't agree with what our kids do in response to an emotion. But that doesn't mean that we can't validate the emotion itself, right? Even if we have to redirect the response to that emotion. So this is the bad news, but there is good news. But first we got to have a pop quiz. You ready? Pop quiz. So fill in the blank. Each statement on the on the 4 cards began with these 3 words. They won't. Come on, put it in the chat box. Do something. Tell me, they won't what? They won't speak. They won't speak their story. Do I need to go back and let you see it? They won't speak their story. But guess what? That doesn't necessarily mean that the story won't get told. Because there are different ways for them to tell the story rather than speaking it. So that's the good news. Art speaks what words can't explain. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples from my experience, my personal experience of working with these 2 young men. Okay, the first one, and you tell me if this is common in your programs. You get kids that come in all the time, especially adolescents, and they've been suspended or expelled for fighting, or they've gotten in trouble with the law for fighting, and their excuse is, I have an anger problem. You heard that before? I have an anger problem. I just have an anger problem. And then you dig a little deeper and you tell them, well, guess what? Anger is a secondary emotion. Anger is not a primary emotion. It comes from something deeper. It comes from fear most of the time. And then they say, well, I ain't afraid of nothing, right? Until you work backwards. You begin to work backwards. And so this young man, his name was Reggie, and he came to us. Now, this didn't happen the first day. This happened several weeks into the program. but we were talking about those fears, those 8 dominant fears that lead often to anger. And it became obvious as we talked to this young man that he had been betrayed by somebody very close to him. And so his fear was the fear of being abandoned, the fear of not being loved for unconditionally. So he believed that if he gave himself into a relationship with someone that was important to him, that he would be abandoned. And once we had that conversation and he sat down to draw his picture of anger, this is what he drew. And it was a breakthrough moment for this kid because he had something in tangible form that represented his intangible emotion. He couldn't speak it, but he could draw it. Here's another one. This young man was 15 years old. Whew. He was gang involved and he was pretty high up in the ranks. And we had the same conversation about fear. He had the same response. I ain't afraid of nothing. And then we worked backwards. And I asked him, when was the last time you were angry and you got in a fight? And he told me, and I asked him further questions, who all was there? And then I ended the conversation with this. What would have happened if you had walked away? Well, my boys would have been, they would have thought I was weak. I was supposed to be their leader, man. I couldn't. Exactly. So look what he titled the picture. The Face of Fear. This was a monumental artist statement. We always have them do a self-reflection after they do a piece of art. And look how he ended it. This represents my fear of losing power. He couldn't say that out loud, but he could draw it and he could express it in his reflection. So art speaks when words can't. Okay, now this may look like a very odd illustration for this workshop, but here's why I included it. I heard a story one time about a first-time real estate investor. He had millions tied up in a high-rise building that was to be built close to his office. And every day he would pass that building site and nothing was happening. All he saw was a hole, and the hole was getting deeper and deeper, but he didn't see a building. So one day in his frustration, he decided that he was going to stop and demand to see the foreman of the work site. So he puts on his hard hat and he goes out there in his Armani suit and he demands to see the foreman. He says, "What are you doing? I want to see a building here. That's what we're paying you to do, is build a building." And the foreman quietly smiled, shook his head, and he said this statement to answer the man's question. And I believe it has implications for our work. If you're going to build high, you have to dig deep. Guys, that's what we want to do, right? That's what we want to do. We want to build our students as high as they can go, as high as their potential will let them go. We want to build them high. But in order to do that, we can't stop our relationship here in the first layer, in the shallow layer. We can't even stop it here in the subsoil. We've got to get to the bedrock of our work, the foundation of what we do. Are you ready for this? Here's the bedrock, in my opinion, of our work with students. I want everybody to unmute and say it with me. You ready? It's 3 little words. The bedrock of our work with students. Here we go. We go
First.
We go first.
We go first.
We go first.
It starts with us. Wow. So what do I mean by that? Well, you know, a lot of times as the authority in the room, we expect kids to walk in with respect, right? These kids who have been traumatized, who have been shamed over and over, who have been judged, who have been hurt, they don't respect anybody until they get respect first. So we respect them first. We listen to them first. We offer grace and space first. We de-escalate conflict first. And if I had another hour to talk on that, right? We de-escalate the conflict first. We're the adults, right? But here's the kicker. Here's the one where we're safe but not comfortable. We demonstrate vulnerability first. Whew, that's not easy, is it? Vulnerability. Anybody else a bad patient besides me? I'm a terrible patient. And I learned something this summer or summer of 2020. You know, after all, it was 2020. I broke my shoulder right here next to the rotator cuff. Went to the orthopedic. He gave me a sling, told me to come back, wear it constantly and come back in 7 days. So I go back in 7 days and I've still got my sling on. He tells me, you know, it's healing fine and everything looks good, no surgery necessary. But he said, you don't have to wear the sling anymore at home, but when you go out, I want you to wear it. And I was like, why do I need to do that? If I don't need it at home, why would I need it when I was out? But he taught me a very valuable lesson at that moment. He said, because if people see that something is wrong with you, they will respond in kind. If you drop something, people will pick it up for you. If you are in a crowded space, which wasn't likely because this was April of 2020, but if you're in a space, people are going to know not to run into you. Wow. So people respond kindly if they know you're vulnerable. Whew, that taught me this lesson, that our wholeness is not achieved by rejecting our brokenness, but by embracing it. I recently read Michael J. Fox's latest book. It's called No Time Like the Future. And as you probably know, he has Parkinson's disease, but he was telling the story about a friend of his named Jimmy Choi. And now, if you're a Ninja Warrior fan, you may have heard that name before. But Jimmy Choi was, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's at 27 years old. He said he didn't even tell his wife for the first few months. And even when he told his immediate family, he didn't tell anybody else for 7 years. For 7 years, he kept this a secret because he didn't want anybody to know. He was just ignoring it. And then after 7 years, he got involved with the Fox Foundation, and he met with a group of people around a table, all of whom had Parkinson's, and he finally said it out loud. And in the book, he describes the liberation of saying it out loud. Because you see, when we name it, it lessens its power over us. Name it to tame it. Jimmy Choi has now run 16 marathons and has done Ninja Warrior 4 times with Parkinson's disease as a result of naming it and sharing that community of other people who share his story. That's a beautiful story of vulnerability. If you're a social worker, you know this name, Brene Brown. If you've been in any of my trainings, you also know this name. But I love how she describes vulnerability. She says it's the willingness to show up and to be fully present in the moment, to be seen with no guarantee of the outcome. And guys, we've got to model that because our kids don't know how to do that. So if we model vulnerability, we're inviting connection. So the first of the activities that I'm going to give you today is a team building exercise that you will be able to use with your own kids in your programs. Okay, so are you ready to make connections? And are you willing to be a little vulnerable? I would really love to see your faces. I'm not going to share my screen. I'm going to stop sharing my screen in just a moment as soon as I show you this. If you opened the links to the Google Sheets that Paula gave us at the beginning in the chat box, you will find a prompt sheet for this activity. It's just different statements that might or might not be your story. And that's fine. If they're not your story, then don't say them. But if they are your story and you feel like sharing that, that would be great. So on the index card or on a Post-it note, I know you've got a Post-it note somewhere around you or a piece of paper of some kind. I want you to write the words, me too. We were doing Me Too long before it became a movement, okay? So this has been an activity that we've done a lot. All right, so you're gonna have Me Too written on your card. So we're not gonna go in any particular order. I wouldn't want you to unmute if you're willing to participate. I'd love to see your face, but if you're not comfortable with that, you know what? You can turn it this way to cover up your camera when it's not you, and then you can turn it this way to say me too, okay? So you can still participate in the game even if you don't want to be seen, all right? So each time a statement is shared, if it's your story too, you're gonna hold up me too. We're gonna give it 2 or 3 seconds to see who all is me tooing, who all shares that with us. Groups are formed in pairs, so look for people with whom you share commonality, and then insert comic relief statements if things get too heavy. You ready? I'm going to stop my screen share so I can see people, and because we go first, I'm going to go first. Okay, so here we go. If this applies to you, please hold up your Me Too card. All right. I was deeply affected when my parents divorced before I turned 18. If that's your story, hold up your Me Too. Hang on, I got to look at the second page too. Awesome. Then just jump in with anything you want to share, whether it's on the prompt or not. I'm not afraid of silence, by the way. Anybody want to share a piece of your life? Go ahead, Loretta. Thank you.
Okay, so you are a piece of my life where I have been affected.
Yeah, it just a statement that's true about your life. It can be anything.
Okay.
I play 3 musical instruments, you know, that kind of thing. It can be anything.
I was deeply affected when I went to an all-white school and was called the N-word.
Wow. Does that apply to anybody else? If so, hold up your Me Too card. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else, just jump in. You don't have to get permission to talk here. I'm not afraid of silence.
I got one. I've been affected by someone with cancer.
Wow. You don't necessarily have to start it with I've been affected. It can be just anything about your story. It can be funny. It can be serious. Doesn't matter.
I've been affected by my own divorce.
Mm, no. If that applies to you. Okay. Thank you.
I got another one that's lighter. I've played sports.
Nice. Just jump in. Anybody? I've walked out of a movie before because it was raunchy and I didn't want to stay. Anybody else? All right.
I've done that.
Cool. Anybody else got one? Look on the prompt sheet if you have access to it.
I've always wished that I grew up with an older sibling in the house.
Yeah, I was the oldest. I get it. Anybody else before we move on?
I was affected by my sister's suicide.
Whew. Anybody else? Anybody got a me too with that? Wow. Thank you for sharing. I play 3 musical instruments. Anybody? All right. Yay. Cool. All right. Well, we're going to stop that because we're not going to have time to do the art project if we don't. But you see how that works, right? And typically we would be in a circle doing this exercise. Circles are very community building. No, they don't end. There's no hierarchy. You know, everybody is equal and you can't hide in a circle. So just remember that if you choose to do it in person. And believe it or not, it is it's very effective with an in-person thing where you can look people in the eye and really see who shares something with you. But there's one part of this that I don't want you to miss, and that is that you always debrief this, okay? Because sometimes you may need a breathing exercise, right? In fact, let's all just take a minute and breathe in, breathe out. Tara Shelton at APS. She's the APS SEL coordinator, and she talks about 20-20-20. So when you're about 20 minutes in, you look to the left or the right away from your screen, you look 20 feet for 20 seconds and just focus on sounds or what you see. Focus on your breathing. And that wasn't 20 seconds, but you get it, right? 20-20-20. So that's also a good exercise. But debrief by asking them what surprised them. Anybody surprised? Or did you not get the commonality that you thought you would when you said something? Did you feel heard? Okay, so that's the kind of thing that you would do to debrief. And again, if you signed up to get the handouts, that the debrief questions will be in there as well. Okay, so let's keep going. Well, if my screen will cooperate. What's going on? Here we go. All right, this is what you came for, right? Art. And I've already talked about the effectiveness of art as a storytelling medium. So I love this Picasso quote, art is a lie that helps us realize the truth. This young lady was one of our foster care kids. And so this is the word that she picked to define her life at that moment, in sand art. But anyway, all right, so here we go. If you got the handout, it looks like this. It's a heart map. We're going to do a heart map as our art project today. Okay. It's in 2 parts. So the first part is a brainstorming session. I'm going to play music for approximately 2 minutes is all I'm going to be able to give you because we're going to run out of time. By the way, if you have questions as we go, please let me know, or let Paula or Elizabeth or whoever's with me as my moderator, if you would just raise your hand or put it in the chat box. Okay. All right. So the heart map looks like that. If you did not get the handout, then take a plain piece of paper and draw a big heart in the middle of it. Okay. Just draw it with a pencil. And here are the heart map questions. And if you want to do the answers around the heart, that's fine. If you want to do it on a separate sheet of paper and just brainstorm, that's fine. I'm going to give you approximately 2 minutes. I'm going to play music, and I want you to have as many answers as you can come up with. If you don't have an answer right off the top of your head for one of the questions, skip it and go to another one. Okay. The point is you want as many answers to the questions that you have answers for in the time. Of course, if you were doing this live with a group of students, you would give them much more time than I'm able to give you today, but just to give you an idea. Okay, everybody ready? So here we go. If I can get my music to play. Remember to breathe. Don't get so emotionally embedded in this that you forget to breathe deeply and blow it out. Breathe in on the things that make you smile and blow out all the negative, sad things. All right. Now, the next part of this exercise is going to be a discussion that adds a different level to this art project. The art project, I don't want you to ever think that the art project is just arts and crafts. And many times in after school programs, especially, it's arts and crafts. That's not what this is. This is a therapeutic art project designed to help kids tell their story. Okay. And a deep dive discussion either in the middle of it or after it or before it, helps to add a different level of understanding to the art project. Okay, so what I want you to do now is go back to your answers, to your brainstorm list, and I want you to circle at least 5 or 6 of them that are either the deepest embedded in your heart or that take up the most space in your heart. So go back and circle 5 or 6 answers at least. You can do more, but at least 5 or 6. Circle those answers. And then on your heart, I want you to do this. Again, there it is. Okay. I want you to divide your heart into however many sections correspond with those circled answers. So count the circles, the circled answers, and then divide your heart accordingly. Divide it in pencil first, preferably, and then color it in with whatever you have. Highlighters are very quick. I did the one on the right in highlighters. I did the one on the left with 16 or 17 sections in colored pencil. Okay, but the next section is about the deep dive discussion that we're about to enter into. But you can color while I'm going over this, okay? So feel free to keep coloring your sections, and then you're going to outline the sections in the black Sharpie or some dark marker if possible, okay? But anytime before we get into a deep dive discussion, we always have to ensure a safe space. Now you can color and listen at the same time, so please keep coloring, okay? If you have colored pencils or highlighters. If you don't have either of those, you can always do different Zentangles or doodles to fill in the spaces, okay? But ensuring a safe space for your students involves contracting for confidentiality. We remind them often what happens here stays here. What happens in ARTreach stays in ARTreach. They always repeat that over and over again because they want to make sure that you, once again, you're protecting what they give you. However, you are a mandated reporter if you work with students, so you have to discuss those limitations at the beginning. If they tell you that they've been abused, you are mandated to report that. If they tell you they are going to hurt somebody or hurt themselves, you're mandated to report that. So make sure they understand that so that they don't feel betrayed after, should that happen. Okay. Again, ensuring a safe space means that cell phones are put away and they're on vibrate mode. So they're not going to interrupt, and you're not going to have kids secretly trying to record live and post live events. Okay. Staff participates too. Why? Because we go first, right? That's the bedrock of our work. We have to model vulnerability. All stories are equally important, which is why we sit in a circle, because again, there is no hierarchy in a circle and you can't hide. And we use a ball under normal circumstances. We haven't done that since we've been using our protocol for COVID, but normally we use a ball to pass around to control who is speaking. So if you have the ball, you're speaking. And somebody can, they can pass if they're not ready when it gets to them, but you always come back to them. So everybody shares something. You may have to dig a little deeper to get what you want from them. And always remember the phrase, tell me more. We say that several times every week, tell me more. Okay, so today's deep dive discussion is going to be more or less a fishbowl circle, because I know we have 25 participants and we don't have time for everybody to participate. So If you are willing to participate in the deep dive discussion, I would love for you to be on camera and to unmute. If you are not comfortable participating, then feel free to turn your camera off and pass on that and just observe how this activity works. Okay. Now I can't see everybody. I thought I would be able to. I have two screens open, but both monitors are showing me the same thing, so I don't even know why I still have it open. But if y'all could just jump in, if you're willing to share and answer the question that I'm asking you, and tell me who you are, because again, I can't see everybody. I don't know. Maybe I should just not share my screen. Well, I have to share my screen sorry, I'm thinking out loud. Okay, so here we go. If you're willing to participate, please stay on camera, okay? So here we go. The deep dive discussion for today is called signs, because the heart map, every section in that heart map, if you look at it, is probably tied to a relationship of some kind. So the sign that we carry, the sign that we most relate to, would affect our relationships very strongly. Okay. So if I'm a no trespassing kind of person, I want to keep people at arm's length, right? I don't want you to come close. If I'm a public fishing, which I am a public fishing, and everybody's welcome and I wear my heart on my sleeve. If I say, okay, it's shallow here, I don't want you to dive deep, I just want to keep it superficial. You see how those relate to your relationships, how they affect your relationships, especially this one down here, vacancy. I've got a lot of space, a lot of empty space, and I may either be trying to fill that empty space or I may be trying to cope with that empty space. So today's deep dive discussion question then is, which of these signs do you think describes you best when it comes to relationships? Who wants to go first? Do I have a volunteer? Denise? Did you raise your hand, Denise?
Yes, I did.
Okay, cool. So which of those is most descriptive of you when it comes to building relationships?
Slow, proceed with caution.
Oh, okay. Can you tell us more?
Yes, because I tend to be critical of people.
Oh,
And so I like to take things slow and proceed with caution just to see where they go. And so I'm nice and kind to people. And so I can make initial connection, but to get deeper and more vulnerable, that takes more time.
okay. All right. Is there a particular experience in your past that has led you to that you'd like to share? If not, that's okay.
Not a particular experience, but I mean, it was modeled for me.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes sense then. So that was kind of the environment then that you grew up in. All right. That makes sense. All right. Well, thank you for sharing. Anybody else volunteer to talk to me? And remember, I can't see you. So you may have.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Loretta.
Okay, Loretta, thank you so much for sharing.
Well, I'm a little bit like Denise, but I'm a little bit kind of open also. It's kind of like public fishing,
Okay.
but at times I can be very much like Denise. But most of the time I'm pretty open.
All right, very good. So you fall somewhere between public fishing and proceed with caution.
Yeah.
Now, is there a particular vibe in the other person that makes you lean one way or the other?
Definitely.
Okay.
It's dependent. Then it could be a misconception until I get to know them better.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
at first, because your eyes can be tricky. Sometimes what you see isn't always what's there.
Absolutely.
So, it's actions that really kind of determine, where I'll land.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right. Very good. Is there a particular experience that you've had that's kind of developed that in you?
Well, kind of like Denise, my family, they were very open and very loving people with everybody. So, but I was always cautioned, about, okay, you got to watch your friends.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Anybody else willing to share on this one? What kind of sign are you? Miss Chrissy?
Yes, public fishing.
Oh, yay. All right. Tell me why. And how does that affect your relationships?
I think it's usually good. I think it's good. I try and be honest and open. Maybe share too much sometimes, so I have to be cautious of that.
Mm,
Not just for my own good, but for the good of others. Not everyone needs all of your information.
right. Okay. Good
Right.
point. Very good point. So what kind of bait do you use? Public fishing.
Oh, geez, I don't know.
Oh, I do. Your smile.
Okay.
Your smile is infectious, and that's definitely welcoming. So I
Cool.
can understand how you're a public fishing sign.
Thank
All
you.
right. Anybody else? Let's go with one more person.
I'll go, Gina.
Okay. Who said that? Oh, Hillary.
Hillary.
Okay. All right, Hillary, talk to us.
I would say mostly the public fishing, but I do lean towards the slow, proceed with caution. I think there's a time and a place for it.
Okay. So how do you determine what's the time and the place?
It's like Loretta said, is you definitely get a vibe. I think and I think also in whether it's say with like at a church setting or obviously like out in public, I think there's just moments I think where caution is a good idea.
Okay, so the environment makes a difference.
Mhm.
Then. Okay. Now, do you find yourself being more vulnerable at church or less vulnerable at church?
I think it depends on the person. As
Okay.
far as in a, like, obviously my small group at my church, I'm obviously far more vulnerable with them than I would be, say, like a person that I don't know, obviously at church
Okay.
or don't know them as well.
All right.
But I would say I'm more vulnerable at church than somewhere else.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for sharing. I hope this has given you all a glimpse of what a deep dive discussion would do. As everybody in the circle would answer, everybody who has done the first part of the art project would be thinking about those relationships and those sections in the heart map and how maybe the fact that they had this sign on, the warning no trespassing, or the trouble ahead sign on, if they were wearing those signs, then how that might have affected their relationships that are defined by these heart circles. Okay, this is my 16 or 17 section 1 finished. If you have not outlined the sections already with the black Sharpie or pen or marker, whatever you're using, you can go ahead and do that, and then take words or images or both, as I did, to represent those things. I'm only going to be able to give you a couple of minutes. We are almost ready to wind up this session, and Paula and Elizabeth and anybody else from foundations that can just be patient with us. Maybe we might be going 5 minutes over, but I hope that's okay. And if you have to leave, I certainly understand. I won't take it personally. All right. But I'm going to give you just a few minutes with music to start filling in those sections. And I will show you, this is my like 6 section one, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that I did with highlighter. So, I still did the words and the images, but it's just fewer of them. Okay. All right. So 2 minutes. That's all I got to give you. Sorry, my little JBL keeps going out. Remember to breathe. Well, if I can get the music to cut off, there we go. All right, that is all the time I'm going to have to give you on the project. But if you finish the project and you wouldn't mind sending it to me or to Paula and she can send it to me, I would really love to see these. In fact, if you did finish, I would love for you to hold it up right now and let me see it. Awesome, Loretta. Beautiful. Thank you, Chris. You had highlighters too. Those worked well, huh? Oh, Barbara, I love that you left the middle of each section for your words. That's beautiful. Oh, wow. How do you say your name? Igolette? Igolette? I don't know. But anyway, it's beautiful. Oh, Margot, thank you. I love the middle, the circle in the middle. That's beautiful. Nanoom, I love your colors. Beautiful. Thank y'all. Oh, Chrissy, what was your medium? Did you have crayon or colored pencil? You're muted.
Pencil, sorry.
Pencils. Okay, beautiful. Thank y'all so much for sharing those. They're beautiful. All right, I'll go back to screen share and we will finish this up. All right, so always, always, always allow time for self-reflection. This is critically important because up to this point, the art project is task oriented. You want to finish it, right? You want to do it. You're doing something with your hands. But now it takes an introspective turn. So allow for this self-reflection. We normally do that by bringing all of the art projects back to a table and circling up and talking about it. We call it our wind down. But we have also done it with journaling. And we had a volunteer one time that bought all the journals for all the kids. So they have art journals. So just think about this for now. Obviously, we don't have time to discuss it or to write it, but which of these sections takes up the most space or is deeply embedded? Which do you think about or replay in your mind because your heart can't delete it? How does that affect your mood, attitudes, and behaviors? Which of these do you wish you could delete? And how would that make your life different? Those are just some ways that you can let them reflect on what the art project that they have just done. Okay. All right. Well, very quickly, let's wind this up. I heard Manny Scott, whose story was used in the film Freedom Riders. I heard him speak at the National Youth at Risk Conference in 2017, and he said something that has stuck with me that I just thought was so profound. He said, you've heard the phrase, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But he said, you know what you can do? You can make it thirsty. You can't make the horse drink, but you can make it thirsty. So when we go first, guys, when we use that as our bedrock, as our foundation of our work with students, we go first. It starts with us. And I guarantee you, it will make them thirsty. All right, some final reminders before we go. Protect what they give you. It is a treasure. If they share your story, they are honoring you with that story. Help them hold it, but don't carry it for them. That robs them of the experience of processing it. It gets messy, guys, to help them process it. And it's not an overnight thing. There is no such thing as just get over it. And there's no such thing as a shortcut when you're talking about processing pain in their lives. Help them hold it, but don't carry it for them. And finally, remember that fixing them is not your job. Our kids are not problems to be fixed. They are assets to be built. And remember, we want to build them high as their potential will allow. So we got to dig deep. So we go first. All right. Questions, comments, snide remarks. That's what I used to say in my class when I would end my classroom sessions. Anybody want to share anything you learned about yourself today? Ask any questions? Anybody? 5, 4, 3, 2.
I just want to say, first of all, this was really informative, so thank you. But also for people who are working with adults, I think these are some great strategies to use with staff at schools if you're an administrator or some in a leadership role in an organization. So I just wanted to share that idea.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I do appreciate that. And I don't know if you've heard of the Dream Center of Henry County, but they are currently working with homeless women and using some of the ARTreach strategies in that setting. So you are absolutely right. And I've had staff members or volunteers. In fact, one of the school psychologists used to volunteer with us, and he came up to me after he had been there 2 or 3 times. This was after he retired, and he said, Gina, who is this for again? Because he was getting so much out of the program that he was like, this ain't for the kids, this is for us, So that you are absolutely right. All right, so anybody else? Last chance. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Here's the QR code again if you want to sign up for all the goodies that I'm going to send. And please send me the photos of your finished art work if you didn't show it to me already. All right. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you, Gina. We really
right.
appreciate it. Great presentation. So much useful information that we can take back and use with kids immediately. And that's really what we're trying to do with this webinar series, everybody. So please join us again. We're doing this once a week on Wednesdays. We're moving to 3 o'clock Eastern time starting in May. So next week, we have a great presentation with Mary Curry. It's a math session. So share, this is free professional learning. You get a certificate of attendance, pass it on to your friends. Anybody can join. And we hope to see you in February in Orlando from the 3rd to the 26th in 2022. All right, everybody, have a great afternoon.